We are so glad to have one of our rebbeim who will be doing just that, picking himself up and making that trip from him, Eretz Yisrael, to to share with us some words on this special day of Yom Ha'atzmaut. When Rav will be going, he's got Eretz Yisrael this summer, moving there, living there, will share with us some ideas about Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Bacon. Just before we get started, I just want to perhaps abuse the opportunity I have to be standing up in front of you to wish a very hearty mazel tov to my nephew Ilan, who came in second in the Chidona Tanakh Olami this morning in Eretz Yisrael. And he's not here, obviously. But it's a chizuk for everyone to be able to apply ourselves to Limud HaTorah in all of its different forms, and certainly a tremendous source of chizuk on this special day. It's extraordinarily meaningful for me on a personal level to be speaking here this morning. It's meaningful, as Rabbi Bacon mentioned, that Be'ezus Hashem, this coming August, my wife and I will be making Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, the culmination of numerous years of planning, placing various things in place in order to make this momentous move. And it's incredibly meaningful for me to be able to share a little bit of that moment and that excitement, specifically with this very distinguished tzibur here at Yeshiva University. My connection to YU goes back to when I came here as a student in 1990, and essentially both philosophically as well as geographically never really left this institution. To be able to share some words on this Yom Ha'atzmaut, words of appreciation for the incredible matana we have, which is the modern day state of Israel, together with this distinguished group, is a very important source of meaning to me myself. Yom Ha'atzmaut is an opportunity that we have to give Shevach v'Hodaah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the gift of the modern day state of Israel. I often think that for us to appreciate what this gift is really all about is to engage in a little bit of a thought experiment. What would Eretz Yisrael look like today had there not been a state? We know that the British mandate was to hand over the area which was then called Palestine and to make it into a Jewish state. The British would not be there today under any circumstances. Theoretically, if we rolled back history and there was no modern-day state of Israel, Eretz Yisrael today would probably be under either the Ottoman Turks or the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. What would the Jewish population of Eretz Yisrael look like today if the political entity in Eretz Yisrael was Turkey or Jordan? If we just imagine for a moment what the Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael would look like under those circumstances, how impoverished spiritually all of world Jewry would be, we can begin to appreciate what a tremendous bracha having the state there is today. But I think as much as we're all celebrating the 77th anniversary of the creation of the state, there's an issue that I wrestle with. I assume that many people here were wrestling with the same issue as well. What does it mean to give Shevach v'Hodaah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when the state itself is going through a state of crisis. And not simply a crisis, but one might speak of several crises in the plural, which the modern-day state of Israel is dealing with at this very moment. For years, we always spoke about how the state of Israel was a safe haven for Jews, where we could go and feel protected. And of course, that's true, but a certain degree of that certainty was shaken, I think, for all of us after the events of October 7th. I'm always a little bit bemused by my Israeli cousins who will ask me regularly, do you feel safe in America? You can walk around really with your tzitzis out, with the yarmulke. They haven't spent a lot of time in America. You feel safe? We read all these things in the media about how Jews are being beaten up in the streets of New York. And one thinks about that in the context of the horrific events of October 7th. And one can perhaps ask, who feels safer? Is the state of Israel really the safe haven which we've spoken about for so many years? There are crises going on right now in terms of the social fabric of Eretz Israel. Deep fissures among the people as to what the approach should be to solving some of the issues which have come up since October 7th. Life and death issues. Deep fissures within the religious society in Eretz Israel, things which are profoundly painful. And as we saw yesterday, and we're still seeing today, a country which is literally on fire. Literally on fire. So here we are giving Shevach Hodaah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How do we do that in the context of all of these crises which have yet to be resolved? So one very simple answer is to ignore the crises and just keep on celebrating. We'll deal with the crises tomorrow. Today may be Yom HaAtzmaut, people saying Hallel. Some people may be saying Hallel on Shabbos. But tomorrow, as far as I know, nobody's saying Hallel. So we'll deal with all of the problems tomorrow. I don't think there's a din of Yom HaMeyuchas when it comes to Yom HaAtzmaut, that the day between the 2 days of the saying of Hallel somehow is invested with a certain significance, as far as I know. So we can kick the can down the road. There are crises, yeah, there are crises, but today is about celebrating what happened in 1948, celebrating the years from then until now, and we'll deal with the crises when we deal with them. But I think a different approach can be taken, one in which the crises which are going on actually inform and elevate the very celebration in which we're engaged today. Our Shevach Hodaah today can be that much more powerful, precisely in the wake or the shadow of all of the unresolved events which are taking place in Eretz Yisrael. I'd like to invite you for a couple of moments to take a walk with me down memory lane, my own memory lane, and go back to the spring of 2001, when I first started teaching here at YU. I was a BMP Rebbe for 1.5 years, and I had the schus of teaching in IBC for the past, do the math, many years since the fall of 2002. 2002. And at that time, when I was just teaching for a couple of weeks, the student council of SBMP asked me if I could give a shiur at night on the topic of Yom HaAtzmaut. So I was happy to do it. And without giving the whole shiur over today, one of the major Mar Makomos was a fascinating passage at the very end of the Sefer Chayei Adam, where the Chai Adam, Rav Avram Danzig, talks about an event in his own life and the life of his family that led him to establish for himself a day of Shevach v'Hoda'ah LaKadosh Baruch Hu. In 1803, the winter of 1803, there was a gunpowder explosion in the courtyard where the Chai Adam lived in Vilna. 36 individuals sadly lost their lives in that gunpowder explosion. The Chai Adam and his family were entirely spared. And from that day on, every year on the anniversary of that salvation for the Danzig family, the Chai Adam set aside a day, as he describes at length in his Sefer, a day which was devoted to Avodas Hashem, a day devoted to saying Tehillim, to fasting for those who could, for giving tzedakah, for learning Torah, which culminated that evening in a Seudas Hoda'ah, which was observed with great pomp and circumstance, giving praise to the Ribbono Shel Olam for having saved the family. And in the context of describing that event of giving praise to Hashem, the Chai Adam says, I'd like to give you my pshat in the chapter of Tehillim, chapter Kuf, Mizmor L'Soda, Psalm of giving thanks to the Ribbono Shel Olam. Chapter of Tehillim we're all familiar with. What's striking about the interpretation of the Chai Adam of that particular chapter is that he interprets the entire chapter as speaking about the Yemos HaMoshiach. Not thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the here and now. The person who, after all, brought a Korban Todah was thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for something momentous that had happened in their own life recently. That, says the Chai Adam, is not the focus of Mizmor L'Soda. Mizmor L'Soda, and he goes in through the psukim there, is talking about our dreams, La'asid Lava, for the Yemos HaMoshiach. Du'uki Hashem hu Elokim. You know, there'll come a time where the Midas HaRachamim, Hashem, and the Midas Hadin, Elokim, will be recognized to be all the same. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. Serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with simcha. There's no simcha, writes the Chai Adam in Olam Hazeh. It's only in Olam Haba that we're really going to be able to have the ultimate simcha. And the entire chapter of Tehillim, he interprets in that fashion. It's beautiful. You can take a look at it. But it's a little bit odd. I mean, after all, the person bringing the Korban Todah, who was saying Mizmor L'Soda, was focused on events that had happened in the very recent past. He had just survived a sickness, a journey, a difficult passage of time. Why are we talking about Yemos HaMoshiach? And I think the idea that the Chai Adam brings out over here is crucial. The Chai Adam is telling us that Hodaah, giving thanks, is not just about thanking Hashem for the past. It's about dreaming and davening for the future. You survived the shipwreck. You're bringing a Korban Todah. That's beautiful. But your obligation to give Hodaah is not just to thank Hashem for having survived. It's to dream about what could be even bigger and better. That's the lesson of the Chai Adam. You see this in countless places in our davening, if you just bother to take a look. We all woke up this morning, Baruch Atah Hashem, Hamavir Sheino Me'ena Yusnumo Me'afapoi. We thank Hashem for the privilege of having woken up in the morning. Most of us are awake by now. And having wiped the sleep out of our eyes. But as we know, the halacha is that's not the end of the bracha. Beautiful, a beautiful tefillah. What's it got to do with Hamavir Sheino Me'eno Yusnumo Me'afapoi? I think the answer is this idea, this yesod. We give Hodaah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for where we are, but as we give Hodaah, we're dreaming about what we want to be and where we want to go. Targileinu b'sarasecha, v'davkeinu b'mitzvosecha. I'm here for a purpose. Modim de Rabbanon. Al shech yisonu v'kiyamtonu, kein techayenu u'skaimenu, v'sesof kol yosenu l'chatzus kodshecha. Our Hodaah is focused not just on the past, but on the future. That's, I think, a powerful lesson for the Hodaah of today. We're not just taking a moment to celebrate what we have, but as we look around at the imperfections in what we have, the crises which are unresolved, part of today is to daven, and to daven seriously, that the one who's kol yochel, that the Ribono Shel Olam, who's omnipotent, can resolve those crises in a way in which only He can. For those who said Hallel, for those who will be saying Hallel, we say that in Hallel. Odecha ki anisani, and 2 seconds later, Ana Hashem Hoshiana. We thank you, but at the very same time we thank you, we're davening for the future. But I think it's more than davening alone, as important as that is, which is important for the Hodaah of today. It's a very well-known Gemara, beginning of Masechta Brachos. From the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, there was no one who gave Hodaah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu until Leah Imenu came along and gave Hodaah. When Yehuda, her 4th son, is born, Hapam Oda Es Hashem. Before it was a song, it was a pasuk. Leah is the paradigm of giving Shevach Hodaah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rishonim already struggled to understand the Gemara. Really? Nobody gave thanks to the Ribono Shel Olam before Leah Imenu? Noach came out of the Teva after a year of the Mabul, and he didn't say thank you? Really? How do we understand the Gemara? So I think perhaps one can suggest as follows. As the Rishonim already point out, Leah had gotten a matana from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which in a sense was more than her share. There were 4 mothers of the Jewish people. Each of them should have been entitled to 3 out of the 12 Shivtei Ka. When she gave birth to Yehuda, it was already above and beyond what she was expecting to get. And the pasuk says, "Vatamod miledes." After she had Yehuda, she wasn't getting pregnant anymore. She could have stopped there. She could have said, I have an incredible matana from the Ribono Shel Olam. It's great. 4 kids, wonderful. 4 of the Shiftei Ka, amazing. I don't need anything more than that. But she kept dreaming big. She said, if the Ribono Shel Olam is giving me a matana, it means that He wants me to maximize the matana. Part of giving thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to think about how I can bring this matana, this gift, to the next level. And what does Leah do? Even after it seemed like she wasn't going to have any more children, she brings about the births of Yisachar and Zvulun. She doesn't stop. She knows that the best way to say thank you for a gift is to try to make the gift as beautiful as possible and to use it in the best possible way. I had the privilege of being a Rav on the East Side, the Lower East Side, for 20 years. One of the many privileges I had was the privilege of a senior colleague, Rav Yeshaya Sif Shlita, who was a Rebbe here in JSS from the very beginning of the JSS program for many, many years and only retired a few years ago. Rav Sif Shlita took over as the Rav in the Young Israel of the Lower East Side in 1964 and is still there, so you can do the math. Rav Zvi shared with me the following story. He said it was in the early days teaching in JSS. And in those days, there was a Rebbe in JSS who was known as a Fabrenta Kanoi, a Fafrumta, a real religious zealot. It might surprise people to hear his name was Rabbi David Hartman. Life changed a little bit after that. In those days, he was a tremendous Kanoi. And he marched into the offices of Rabbi Moshe Bezdin, Zichrono Livracha. If you don't know the name, you should familiarize yourself with the name, the legendary director of the JSS program. He came in, he banged on the table, and he said, Rabbi Bezdin, I can't teach these JSS students. I can't teach them. I was talking to the members of the class. They don't put on tefillin. They don't put on tefillin. The commentator thought it had a scoop. This is the 1960s. They don't put on tefillin. How am I supposed to teach Talmidim who don't put on tefillin? And Rabbi Bezdin turned to him and said, Duvi, you know what you sound like? You sound like a doctor who comes and complains, how can I possibly work in this hospital? Everybody here is sick. How can I work here? If they don't put on tefillin, he told him, your job is to get them to a point where they can put on tefillin. That's why you're here. That's why you're doing what you're doing. The answer is not dismiss them and say, they're not on my level, how can I work with them? The answer is, this is your job. This is what you're supposed to be doing. This is your malacha. This is your avoda. Don't run away from what you're supposed to be doing. That's what you were positioned to do. That's the Hodaah of Leah Imenu. The matana I have is perhaps not quite what it could be. But my job is to try to raise that level so the matana meets, if not all of my expectations, at least more of my expectations. I think that's today's Hodaah. And it's a Hodaah which is that much more profound and more poignant because we are in a moment of crisis. There are so many things which should be better about the current situation. That's true. Our job is to be shutfin, is to be partners in making those things better. And that means different things for every person. It may mean Aliyah. It may mean working here to try to better the image of the state of Israel. It may mean trying to make connections between different parts of society and bring them together. There isn't a one-size-fits-all answer for everyone. And lo alecha hamlacha ligmar, there's no one person who can do all of that. But v'lo ato ben chorin libatel mimena. But you're not at liberty to be able to just say, it's a problem and it's somebody else's problem. On this day where we're giving Shevach Hodaah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the most profound sense of the term, we should be zocha very soon to the fulfillment of the pasuk B'milua. Ki nicham Hashem Tzion, nicham kol chorvoseha, vayasem midbar le'eden, ve'arvasa kigan Hashem, sasam v'simcha yimatzeba, toda v'kol zimra. Thank you very much.
Beautiful, Shakaya. Glorious.
Thank you, Rabbi Romm, for very, very inspiring, uplifting words. Which is tremendous. I come up with his Aliyah. When we be able to fulfill what he has taught us, partner with Eretz Yisrael, bring about the ultimate Israel. Ron, thanks,